With that, since we know that we have a quorum present, I will call to order the June 20th Peninsula RPTO meeting. We have a fairly full agenda today, but as always, because we're recording this and we do put it on our website, I like to go through and introduce everyone, and I do it by who I see on my screen. And that way the public, when they're watching, knows who everyone represents. And when I look at my screen, the first person I see is Thera Black. And Thera is the RPTO coordinator. Next, I see myself. I'm Beck Ashby. I'm a city council person with the city of Port Orchard, and I am chair of the Peninsula RPTO. Sarah Crouch is with Jefferson Transit, and she is the person that administers the financial aspect of Jefferson Transit is our fiscal agent. Steve Gray is with Clallam County's Transportation Department. David Fort is with Kitsap County's Transportation Department. Annette Nessie is with the Jamestown Sklallam Tribe. Wait, Annette. Anyway, there we go. There's Annette. And there's John Clausen, who is Executive Director of Kitsap Transit. Rachel Anderson, with council member with the city of Sequim. Amy Asher is with Mason Transit. She is their new Executive Director, and this, I believe, is her second meeting. Ed Stern is a council person from the city of Paulsbo. Kate Dean is a Jefferson County Commissioner. Ed Coviello, Ed, I just butchered your name. He is also a coordinator. He works directly with Kitsap Transit. Michael Bateman is with the Transportation Department of the city of Paulsbo. Wendy Clark Getson is transportation with the Jefferson County and chair of our technical advisory committee. Okay, people just moved. Dennis Engel is with Olympic Region DOT, and I'll be kind today. Dennis is speaking today, and it's one of my favorite programs that we have all year. So thank you for putting that together. Gary Anderson is with the Port of Bremerton. Kate Favor, however you pronounce your last name, she is here to support Dennis Ingalls. She is a planner with Olympic Region. Brendan Meyer today is representing Clallam Transit. Is that correct, Brendan?
That's correct,
okay.
Beck. I'm a city councilor in the city of Port Angeles, but I am here representing Clallam Transit. Thank
you. Randy Netherland is our vice chair, and he is a Mason County commissioner. Stephanie Lilly is with Kitsap Transit. Cliff Hall is with the Tribal and Regional Integrated Planning Office. Joe Schmidt is with, I'm assuming, Joe, that you're a council person with the city of Shelton?
Yes, that's correct. Standing in for our Deputy Mayor, Deidre Peterson.
Thank you, Joe. It's the first time we've had Joe at a meeting. Appreciate you being here. Elizabeth is with DOT's Public Transportation Department. Ariel Spieser is with she's a council person in the city of Port Townsend. And Matt Kluntz is with, he's a transportation or public works with the city of Sequim. Do we have more people? I'm seeing a second page. Oh, and I think that phone number down there, is that you, Tammy Rupert?
Yes, that's me. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties, but I'm here.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will begin. Okay, so we will begin our agenda. And the first item of business, of course, is to approve the agenda. Is everyone in agreement of approving the agenda? Do we need a motion for that?
I have that listed as an action item.
Okay, since that's an action item, Steve Gray, I'm sure you would like to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Thank you. And
One second, this is
thank you,
Kate.
Kate. So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion? I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved by unanimous consent. I would like to take, if it's agreeable with everyone, on our consent calendar, and maybe I should have done this when we approved the agenda, I would like to move the third bullet point, the approval of our Title VI plan, to a business item. Or I would like to vote on it separately from the other two consent items. The other two consent items are our quarterly invoice and the meeting summary from April. Or
Madam
June.
Chair, I move that we pass the consent agenda item with that item removed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Rachel seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the June 18th meeting. A corrected revised version was sent to everyone earlier, and approval of the fourth quarter invoice for 2021. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? I'll ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be voting against that motion? Hearing none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. And I wanted to pull out the Title VI just because I wanted to make sure that if there were any questions or comments, I just felt that it may warrant a discussion. I wanted to make sure that the board had an opportunity to weigh in on that if they so chose. So Sarah, I will let you introduce that item for us.
Sure. The Title VI, this is an update of the 2015 Title VI plan that PRTPO had. With this update, we affected sort of the rest of that transition since WashDOT Olympic Region is no longer the lead planning agency, so brought this all internal to PRTPO. We updated the format based on direction that we got from Gretchen Gui at the WashDOT's Office of Equal Opportunity, Employment Opportunity. I'm going to get the acronym wrong there. And then updated the data where data updates were available. And so we brought this to you in June for a first reading. We sent a draft to Gretchen Gui for review and the Multimodal Planning Office. We also posted it online for public review and comment. We got no comments back from that. So it's coming to you now for final approval. And so what it does is if I'm sure you all look through it, it just lays out how we will ensure in our work program that we are not discriminating against members of our public or putting, inadvertently or deliberately creating barriers to participation in our regional planning process. And then it also lays out what the course of action is if somebody feels that we have violated their Title VI rights, and how we would remediate for that. So that's what it does. And as I said back in June, we have 2 languages that we will pay attention to as we go forwards with our processes, especially if we're doing work in the Shelton area. Spanish is spoken by more than 1,000 people in the vicinity of the Shelton area, which sort of triggers a limited English proficiency requirement. And then also if we're doing work around the Filipino community in Bremerton, that's our second language, Tagalog, that is spoken by more than 1,000 people in the region who do not also speak English very well. So those are 2 populations, and like I said, happy to, again, answer any questions that you might have about this.
And we'd entertain a motion to approve our Title VI plan as presented.
This is Brother Meyer. I make a motion to approve the Title VI amendment as presented.
Second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And now we'll open for discussion. I'm assuming everyone had an opportunity. We did have an initial review of this in June, and so everyone had a couple of months to look it over. Are there any questions or discussions on our Title VI plan? Seeing none, there's been a motion and a second to approve the Title VI plan as presented. Is there anyone who would be choosing to vote against that motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who would be choosing to vote against that motion? Seeing none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. So thank you very much. And now we're going down to a discussion item, which is the draft UPWP development policy. This is the one item that we realized when we did our bylaw review, that this was the one policy and procedures that we had not completed yet. So Thera, do you want to walk us through that quickly?
Sure.
It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a real simple process.
It is, and it's really governed. This is the UPWP, especially for anybody who's new to PRTPO. This is the work plan for the region. So it describes what's going to be done and the budget that it will be done with. And our funds for this work come from WSDOT. So this is all developed sort of on a regular schedule every year as sort of driven by the WSDOT process. So it just lays out, we try to lay out very clearly for future board members, somebody new coming on, to explain what the board responsibilities are in this process, how you're supported by the coordinators, and sort of the timing for it. And then very importantly, how what triggers an amendment, why, and how would you do an amendment to that. So I think it, like Beck said, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Maybe seems a little too basic, but we're trying to think through, what would support future board members coming on to understand how this process works. So if you have any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them for you. This is a first reading. This will come back to you for approval at your next meeting in October.
Again, we simply articulated, put in written format what we do. The policy is pretty basic and pretty simple. So if you would take a look at that and either have questions now or be prepared to vote for approval of it at our October meeting. And again, for those of you who are new to our process, when we have action items, typically policy issues or any contract issues, we present them at one board meeting and we vote on them on the next, so that everyone has an opportunity to do appropriate due diligence. So that was your first reading of our UPWP development plan. Moving on down our agenda, we have an update on the UPWP funding. This is what has prompted this is because this is that section, correct, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. What has prompted this is, again, this is my first comments are going to be informational to particularly our new board members. The Peninsula RPTO is funded 100% through state of Washington monies that were allocated, through the state legislature's budget process. And so that's what we're used to working with. And when we did our due diligence, again, many of you are new, we did have Washington State Department of Transportation Olympic Region was our lead planning agency for several years, well, since our inception. And then here 2-3 years back, probably 4 years now, they didn't want to continue that process. And so we started a transition period to move away from DOT as our lead planning agency. And that process took us to Kitsap Transit as our lead planning agency and Jefferson Transit as our fiscal agent. All of the due diligence we did during that time period gave us no reason to believe that we would be working with anything other than state funds. Now, we have been awarded a grant, which is 5311. And for those of you, that's our consolidated grant monies, which are federal dollars. And it opens up a whole new set of compliance issues, compliance obligations, I should say, and expectations and reportings, and the way we manage that money is totally different than we do with our state funds. We have a very, very simple process now. We became aware of this just before our June meeting. And at that time, we as the executive committee said that we would do some due diligence and report back to you in August. We have not had many of our questions answered, and it has not been, as you all know, we're all busy, and scheduling a meeting, it has taken us some time, and the meeting is scheduled for next Monday on the 23rd. After we meet with the folks from the Public Transportation Department and can get some very specific questions answered, then we will come back to you. We have, I guess what I'm trying to say is we're not in a position right now to recommend to you that we accept these funds or that we do not accept these funds. We are very careful and have always done due diligence before, and we would before we signed any contract or brought it to you for approval. Most of the transportation planners that we have in our meeting today, you know how onerous it can be to deal with federal dollars. And we need to make sure that we're in a position to fully meet the obligations that we would create for ourselves if we accepted federal dollars. So that's where we are on that. And what our real hope is that we can get these federal dollars moved to state funds and run them through the tribal and regional integrated planning office as we do the rest of our monies. When we look at all of the UPWP year-end reports that were filed back from about 2016, 2017, the period we were doing our due diligence, all showed state funding when it came to HSTP work. So we're not sure how that happened and if we can make that happen this time. Also, we are also aware that there is at least one other rural RPTO that has had these federal dollars converted to state funds. So that's our update on this. We're still working on it. We will have something more in depth for you in October. And we understand that the public transportation or transit office, I'm sorry, it's the PTD, that they're not looking to get their contracts out until September. So it'll be a quick turnaround for us. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Sarah, did you want to speak to that, or John, or Sarah? You all work with, everyone that I'm looking at here works with federal dollars, and you know that it puts a whole different layer and level of compliance issues for us. And we're just a real simple little group that really works together as a team, and we want to make sure that we can meet our obligations. And that's where that stands right now. Is there anyone else that would like to weigh in on that?
I'd just like to thank Beck and Farah for all the work that they've put into this and for listening to my concerns. It does complicate our very simple RTPO.
Ed, are you wanting, or are you just, okay, please.
Yeah, just for clarification, just to note on attachment E and the little funding matrix there is a typo under the regional tip. It might be good for the future to have that corrected.
Oh, there is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure how often we get $8.10, but. Okay, so we don't want to walk away from $80,000 if we don't have to, but we also want to understand all of the strings that come with it. And so we had promised you in June we would have answers in August, and we don't. So I'm hesitant to promise answers in October, but I think the timeline we're working under, we're going to have to make some sort of decisions in October. So moving on from that, if there's no further discussion, and I would invite anyone, if you want to send me an email or give me a call, if you have any specific questions, I'll be glad to let you know what work we've done to this point. We have been having some at the TAC level, some talk about the Olympic Discovery Trail and the potential use as a US BRS designation. Sarah, did you want to take that, or I wasn't sure who our lead was on that.
Yeah, I'll take that, Beck. This is just to keep you all in the loop of stuff that's brewing in the background that we think may come back to you maybe in the not too far distant future as a possible work program consideration. There is an effort underway to extend something called the US Bike Route System, US BRS, to include facilities in the Peninsula region. The primary interest is with the ODT, with the Olympic Discovery Trail, but to include the Olympic Discovery Trail as a part of the US Bike Route System also entails other facilities that are not yet designated. And so we have scheduled a couple of meetings just to try to understand more about what this program entails, what it's all about, sort of as Beck was saying earlier about due diligence. And as we look at it, it seems like most of the effort would rest on the shoulders of local agencies to identify the specific facilities that would then be incorporated into these route designations. And so we wanted to make sure that our TAC members, had this background and had a chance to ask questions about this process and what, maybe liabilities are entailed, what are the benefits. As the staff memo points out, although it does say from, I think we scheduled meetings with John Pope from the advocacy group that is promoting this, and he's been really instrumental, as I note in there, in getting the system built across different parts of the state. He's really excited about the opportunity here, the economic benefits for long distance cycling as that fits in with the tourism economic base of the region. We also brought in Brian Wood from WashDOT's Active Transportation Program, Active Transportation Office, to talk about specifically what is involved in doing this. And TAC members had a chance to ask questions about, the relationship between these facilities and this designation and other designations, and, the process by doing it, by which these facilities would it be identified, what are the types of characteristics, that might make a particular roadway be a good candidate for this. So we talked about that, and it was pretty clear in that discussion that there's interest, but people's plates are pretty full right now. And so folks needed some time to go back and talk with other staff members and others, and elected officials and all in their own offices to see where something like this might fit into their work program. So going forward, would they be needing to coordinate with folks in their parks departments? Does this line up with non-motorized planning efforts? Who would be doing the sort of heavy lifting, if you would, of identifying the specific facilities to include? We will come back, we will bring this back to the TAC this fall to ask, what does this look like? How much of a priority would this be for your organization right now? And then based on what we learn from that, we'll come back to you as a board to say, here's where we think PRTPO could help going forward, because this is a local priority to make this happen now. How can PRTPO support that? If now is not the right time, this is not a narrow window of opportunity. This designation process happens on an annual basis. So the sort of the window, if you would, of opportunity is around April of every year that would be for the board to make a recommendation to WSDOT and to AASHTO, a national association, to make this designation. So even under the best of circumstances, I don't think we could pull off a designation by this next April. So at the earliest, we're talking about April of 2023. So I did not know when we very first sort of broached this back in the spring, as we were starting to go on our own fact-finding mission on this topic. It seemed like the deadline was, like there was a narrower window of opportunity. But I'm happy to say that there's not a huge rush on this if it's not a pressing priority at the local level right now. So that's my update to you. We had alluded to this earlier. I wanted to close that loop with you. And if you hear any discussion happening within your local jurisdictions about this, this is sort of what's driving that discussion right now. So happy to answer any questions and that you all might have, or entertain any discussion. We'll come back to you as soon as we have a better sense of where this lands in terms of priorities.
Any questions or comments on the bike route work that the technical group has been doing? Kate?
Yeah, I'm curious, does USBRS, I certainly see in the memo here that you're kind of not familiar yet with the requirements. Do they have any kind of clear delineation of what is required, what kind of facilities? And then another follow-up question, I guess, would be just with the current inclusion of the good chunk of the Olympic Discovery Trail designated as part of the Great American Rail Trail, is there any nexus with that kind of federal designation as well?
Yeah, there is a nexus with that. I'll start with that one, and especially in the some of the route alignments that have been identified at the state level. They're really looking to sync those up. So the Great American Rail Trail is another big national trail coordination effort, and so they would look to sync those up. In terms of guidance, there is guidance. It's actually remarkably flexible. So there's not a requirement that facilities be off-road. There's not a requirement that facilities even have, designated shoulders, let's say. And as Brian from WSDOT said, it may be that the best route is a parallel route to, a busier route. Long distance cyclists are, they're not like commuters. They're not always like looking to have the most direct point, routes between point A and B. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what types of facilities can be designated. They have recommendations as far as amenities go in terms of linkages with, access to commercial and retail opportunities, or restrooms, things like that. There's also the opportunity, and I think this was something Michael Bateman brought up about, there's even the opportunity to designate a route and then do like a business loop off of that, you're doing a long distance trip, but this little route right here, take this side road if you want to head down into downtown Poulsbo, let's say, and have lunch and shop and then get back on your bike. So there's a lot of flexibility. It's almost so much there's so much flexibility that it really does allow every local agency to figure out the right way to do it. But then that also sometimes creates more effort at the same time. So
I would say generally, I think Jefferson County would be interested in this designation, just with the caveat that we're pretty maxed out trying to get the next sections of the trail built. And that is a pretty significant effort, including, accessing funding for that as well. So happy to entertain the conversation as we get more details.
Good. And Beck, David has his hand raised.
Okay, David.
Yeah.
Why can't I see David? Where did David go on my screen?
Right here. I was really surprised to see this on the agenda item because my understanding from the TAC is that there was a much more discomfort or questions that needed to be matured before this was advanced to the executive board even for discussion. So I was surprised to see this item on the agenda. We have some significant concerns. I mean, it seems like every other month we get somebody, a third party, trying to use basically kind of jump into our public processes for our non-motorized and to reroute, redesignate, and redefine is going through. And so we have concerns that, especially when you look at these maps and trying to figure out where are they even talking about? I know it's conceptual, but what concept are they trying to do here? And without any kind of coordination with local jurisdictions, there's lines on maps that have rationales and meanings that come before boards like this. And so this is something I think that definitely needs to be vetted significantly more at the TAC level before it's moved up to the executive board, because there are, just like this one and any other third party coming in and trying to designate for their agenda and prioritize, in this case, what is it? National, regional connections over local connections, over community to community connections within, within counties and cities. It's significant policy discussions that are held at the comprehensive plan level, at the non-motorized facility planning levels. And so it takes a lot more effort. It needs to be vetted significantly. We just, one more designation on a route that's slightly different than this other designation causes a lot of confusion when we start to move forward.
Yeah, and I think, David, what you said is kind of what I heard at TAC too, but we also felt that it was important to brief our board on it because our technical group was working on it. The other part that Thera can, sometimes when Thera speaks, she makes it so nice for everyone, and I'm a little more direct. And that is that this effort would have to be at the local level. We do not have at this time, unless the board acquires additional funds, we can't fit this into our work program. So it would have to be understood that if you wanted the RPTO to work on this, we would have to adjust other work program commitments that we've made in order to do this. This is definitely a local level discussion, but obviously coordination through our TAC. And because we are a regional group, it seems like that conversations need to happen here. So we appreciate the input both from Jefferson County and Kitsap County, because as we can see, we're a real diverse group, and the ODT particularly lends itself to this. But anyway, appreciate your comments, and we will keep you informed as to how these things move forward. Now we're to our presentation. This is the one I look forward to every single year because Dennis comes before us and lets us know what DOT is going to be doing in our area. And I really appreciate this. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I even get one meeting where Beck doesn't call me a troublemaker.
I did. I haven't mentioned that at all.
I warned Kate Favre of that I was going to get the troublemaker, and you didn't do it. So so I'm going to share my screen. And let's see here. Okay, are you seeing my screen now? A map?
No.
Okay, then I'm doing something wrong.
Do you see a green share screen, like a square with an arrow in it? On my screen, down near the bottom. If you click on that.
And then it gives me a choice of everything I have open. Oh, I see the problem. I think I got to hit this button that says share.
You got it.
I figure these things out. Okay, so this is all the projects that we have in our STIP that will be coming to you eventually to be included in the RTIP. So first off, before I get into the map, I'm going to go through kind of a list I have. It's we have some programmatic type things that go over the entire region. So you won't see them on this map because they're not individual projects, they're a program. And that's things like region-wide safety features, updating signing. We have breakaway cable terminal replacements. We have bridge preservation, which is bridge deck patching. Oops, too far. Major electrical rehab, which is rebuilding signals. We also have our asphalt chip seal preservation that goes through the entire region. You know, you'll see a lot of paving projects, but they're not in this presentation because they, you know, are fed in later. So the reason I have Kate Favre is she can put together these great GIS maps for me. I can barely spell GIS, so it's nice to have someone that knows what they're doing. And so I got her in case I mess things up, which happens occasionally. So you don't see much here in western Jefferson County. There is a lot of fish passage work going on right now. I think there's like 29 fish passages in one program that's covered in Jefferson County, goes down into Grace Harbor. I think it even goes out to Mason, and well, no, it doesn't go. Yeah, I think it does go to Mason. So anyway, we'll start with Clallam County, and I got two projects right here. You'll see the red dots are fish passage. So like this one here is May Creek on 101. The green ones are more typical WashDOT type projects. Here's Bogachiel River Bridge scour repair. Let's see, we'll go back up further here. We got a fish passage up here on 112 at East Fork of Whiskey Creek. And then we get down closer to Port Angeles. We have Indian Creek fish passage. And here's a WashDOT project. Well, the Elwha River Bridge replacement. That one's been on this list for a while. If anyone has questions, just shout them out because I can't really see if somebody's got their hand up.
Okay, let me ask you, what's the time frame on that Elwha River Bridge?
Right now, let me see if I can find it. I've got a separate list I'm pulling up. Right now, we have a add date of February of 22. I don't know if that's accurate or not. That's just what we have in our list.
Okay.
So we got Tumwater Creek, Fish Passage, a whole series of them here. Peabody Creek, White Creek, Golf Course Road. Oh, this is a regular project. It's rumble strips, going to be installing rumble strips along 101. And here's Lee's Creek. Actually, I think I got one here too that, oh, that's Rumble Strips. Okay, it's not reading the fish passage one there. Get down towards Squim, we got a couple more fish passage. Yeah, this one's just listed out as Jefferson County because it's going to be a package. And here's another one. Blend vicinity, remove fish barrier. So now jumping over to Jefferson County, up here in Port Townsend, we have Discovery Road and Kearney Road. These are compact roundabouts that we'll be putting in. And another fish passage at Chimicum Creek. Over here on SR 20, we have, oh, I guess 101, I'm sorry. Discovery Bay 104, Hood Canal, replacing the VMS sign there. Another fish barrier on SR 19. And then we got, this is a roundabout at 104 and SR 19. Fish passage at Shine Creek. And then this is the public's favorite, 104 Paradise Shine Roads, another roundabout right near the end of the canal bridge. And then we have a bridge painting on the Hood Canal. So let's see, I'll finish up Jefferson County. Got another fish passage over here on Leland Creek and unnamed tributaries. And I think that's it for Jefferson.
You know, Dennis, that roundabout at 19104, what's the time frame on that?
I believe it's going to be done at the same time as the one on the end of the bridge, the end of the Hood Canal. But let me look up what the ad date's showing right now. Looks like it's in February of 2022.
Okay.
So next year. Okay, so Kitsap County. Bunch more fish passages, Cleveland Creek. And we have Sam Snyder Creek. And of course the bridge, Agate Pass, the bridge scour.
Dennis, this is David. Why aren't the 305 projects in here? Agus Wood, they're going out to bid here soon.
They're not listed in our tip for some reason. I'm not
Yeah, because we have Addis Wood, blah, blah. I can't think right in Bainbridge Island. And then this is for the next biennium. I think Totten's even set up for that.
Well, this actually is for the next 6 years.
Okay, yeah. So you definitely the 305 projects are all within that time frame.
There's another fish, Murden Creek. Yeah, there's some of the projects for some reason aren't in the STIP or at this point they should be, but they're not, or maybe there's another reason that they don't show up. North of Chico, this is a stormwater retrofit. There's actually a stormwater retrofit and then a couple fish passages right in the middle of it. So yeah, that's Chico. And then this is another Chico, I think. Yeah, remove fish barriers. We also have a lot of other fish barriers that don't show up that are in various phases. Like there's several right down here in Gorse that I know we're working on. They're in their pre-hydraulic study phase. Pre-design is what we're calling it. And my team has just recently taken on that task. Kate is heavily involved in all that.
Dennis, Jason Metzler just sent me the updated fish passage schedules for what's going into design, what's going into construction for the next 6 as part of that. So he has a public site that has that GIS map that has all the information. And it's a really good source. They provided us the GIS where we could map Kitsap. And what's really great is that the source data in the GIS allows us to go connect with the Fish and Wildlife and know exactly, what creek and get really well on that. But he just put it out as a public map.
Yeah, actually, the map we use for all our fish passages in the state, that feeds off of the WDFW map.
Right.
Their map, they should be identical. And like Gorst, it'll have a bunch of different dots like this, but some of them are actual fish passages. Some of them are like culverts.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some confusion, but it's called out very well. But yeah.
Ed, did you have a comment?
Yeah, hey Dennis, are these funding projects with secure funding only on this database here?
Yeah.
That's an important caveat for people now.
Yeah.
So it's not all the planned projects.
Yeah, but 305 has got secured funding. I mean, that's connecting Washington. So I'm not 100% certain why that one's not showing up.
Sure.
This is Wendy. I'm sorry, my raised hand is not really working. Could it be, Dennis, that the funds are secured, but they're also obligated, so they don't roll into the new TIP, but they might be there now in the current TIP?
Probably it.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. Good. Okay, so we got a fish passage here on SR 16, 160 Kitsap County fish passages. So there's several there. Here's one on 166. Yeah. And we had Long Lake Road out here on 160. This is a roundabout. We also have another project that I'm not seeing show up, but it's already obligated, so it wouldn't show up in the tip. But it's we're replacing 3 signals in Port Orchard along 166, and we've changed it to where it's now going to be replacing 2 signals and putting in a compact roundabout. So the compact roundabout will be at Wolves Road, and we're starting a pre-design process on that. So we'll be coming out to our stakeholders, and then right after that, we'll be going out to the public, letting everybody know on that one.
And Dennis, there's also another fish passage near Long Lake that you have scheduled in the next 2 or 3 years, because we're already coordinating with your traffic.
Yeah, and so that one will already be obligated. It wouldn't be in the.
Okay.
And then we have one here on 16, Burley Creek. I think that's it for Kitsap. So we'll jump over here to Mason. And you'll notice that I don't, the freight corridor doesn't show up on this because once again, it's already obligated. But we do have a fish passage over here at Lillywop vicinity. And we have another one here, Tawana Creek.
Oh, wow.
Then one over here, Victor Creek, SR 302. Oh, got a spot up here. Belfair State Road, ADA compliance. I think we did a paver out there recently, but we didn't do the ADA at that time. And so now we got to go back out and do the ADA. Let's see. SR3, here's a Pickering Road and Agate Road. Both of those are getting compact roundabouts. We're working on the pre-design on those right now. That'll be coming out in the next month or so. We'll be meeting with the stakeholders and then reaching out to the public and let them know what's coming. We have a program where we've gone statewide looking at intersections that are rural, have safety concerns, and there's a couple of criteria. And our region, we selected 10 intersections for compact roundabouts. So my office is doing the pre-design on all 10 of them, and we have to be done by next September. We got 14 months to do 10 pre-designs, so it's a lot of fun. And I think that is it. Like I said, the freight corridor, the Belfair freight corridor is not showing up on this, but that's already obligated because they're working hard on it. So that is the projects that will be in this year's TIP. Any more questions?
Is this data available anywhere else, Dennis?
It will be included in your tip that's coming up. So all this will be added to that.
And when will that be? I'd just love to dig into a little more of the detail on the Jefferson County projects.
So I'll be bringing the tip for PRTPO in front of the board at your next meeting. It'll be available for public review August 31st. There's actually a version up on our website right now. I just have to add it that are in a different county. And then we're also working on a GIS mapping project similar to this. We're in beta form right now. We're running some tests. We may have that done by October. We may not. I don't want to make a promise, but I have to do some manual work to actually place projects. So I'm trying to figure it out.
Thanks, Ed.
Because we don't have the mileposts on our layer like.
Kate, because you're new to this organization, we do have a contract with the Association of Washington Cities for their GIS system, and we're in the process right now of doing all the background work to make it accessible to our members. And we see that as a real valuable tool. We just are not quite there yet.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments for Dennis? I'm looking at some of these compact roundabouts, and they're roads I drive a lot, and so I'm anxious to see them constructed, because many of them are dangerous intersections like that 104 and 19. I just kind of close my eyes and go out in the traffic. And same with the Pickering Passage. I have relatives that live on Harstein Island, and we go down there, and it's not a fun intersection. So thank you. Are there any more questions or comments for Dennis? Appreciate the work you do, and I'm going to be just really nice to you today.
Well, thank you.
Okay, wait till October.
Yeah. Well, then.
And then we'll go on down to the upcoming legislative session. And we had a very small group got together and talked about the lateral pieces that we put out last year, and we talked about what information we wanted in that document this year. So we did up a mock. Thera did that for us, and we would like to open the discussion up on that. And Thera, I will let you lead this discussion.
Sure. Well, thanks. So this, similar to last year, and again, for those of you who were not here with us this time last year, a legislative work group convened sort of a subcommittee of PRTPO executive board and TAC members, and really tried to establish a foundation for regional legislative priorities, in particular policy priorities, fixes, requests, that type of a thing. Last year, they sort of created a polled members, tested messages, and all of that. We put a lot of work into that. So this year, we sort of used all of that as a starting point to go forward. So we were not just starting from scratch. And we, working with them, we were able to talk through, especially the cover letter. So this, as you saw in materials back in June, and I think had attached to the packet this time around, the materials from last year, and it entailed a cover letter, an infographic of some data points in the region, and then a list of regional priority projects that shows sort of a range of the kinds of project needs that the region deals with. We focused so far just on the cover letter with this legislative initial effort to bring to you. And that's what's in your packet today, is that sort of mock-up of that cover letter. there were, as I said in the memo, there were a few things that sort of got changed around. The group wanted to bring sort of the statements forward, the action statements to the front of it, instead of in the past sort of leading with what the problems are. And then sort of also highlight those things that, even if they're not like right on those, that sort of top line messaging, identify some other things that were really important to let our legislators know that we're considering and keeping an eye on. They were issues that came up last year, and we're tracking those, continuing to track them this year. The group also talked about what that engagement process with the legislators will look like. And so thinking about how all this fits together and what we did last year, that engagement process was really attended by the representatives, the legislators who serve on either the House or the Senate Transportation Committee. And so, again, as outlined in the memo, what that this year's legislative work group came up with was the idea of having just one regional engagement, one regional forum that's organized around the scheduled availability of our Transportation Committee members, invite all the legislators to come, but go into it knowing that the ones who are actually really going to be most interested and likely to dial in are those who work on transportation issues at the legislative level. So that was sort of a summary of everything. What we're looking for today is to make sure that, see if we're headed in the right direction, any edits or comments on the cover letter, get your sense on the key messages. We use these key messages beyond just this. So for example, the Transportation Commission will ask us, has asked us for a blurb from PRTPO for all the regions in the state to let them know, to include in their annual report what our priorities are. And so their format doesn't fit our format, but the messages that come out of this process will be used to shape that blurb for them, and gets used other times as well. So making sure at this time that we have the key points, the right messages to include in our legislative packet this next year is really important. We will be updating the infographics in a very minor way. We don't have a lot of budget like we had last year to do this. And there's also not a lot of updated data and the points that we hit last year. So we'll tweak and refine those. We'll also, like we did last year, we will reach out to all the jurisdictions, to all the members, and invite you all to submit a project to include on this list. And we'll probably use the same categories as last year, so that if you look at that project list, it'll say the project and the cost and a really brief description of it, very brief description. We really like to put long descriptions in, but they have to be brief. And then what type of, what are the various things that this project does for us? So in terms of mobility or environmental or construction ready or whatever. So we'll be looking for updates on that information from you all over this next 4 to 6 weeks, so that by October, we can bring back to you a final package and sort of a final process to approve. We'll talk to the TAC in September about the projects on that list and get their input. But again, it's a much more compressed, less expansive process than we had last year. So Beck, did I miss anything?
No, I think you hit it. But the two takeaways I really would like us to discuss today so that we can continue action is, again, last year we had 3 separate forums. They were all online with our legislators, and the only ones that actively engaged us were those with that were members of the Transportation Committee, either in the House or the Senate. So we're thinking about doing just one forum this year and targeting those members and meeting their schedules. And we kind of want a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that approach, because that's a matter of reaching out to our legislators and confirming dates. The actual format of the forum, I'm also seeing as similar as we did last year, with them from various jurisdictions highlighting our particular needs. Is there any comments or suggestions on how we would do the forum this year? I know Mr. Stern, I don't know what he's doing right now, if he's paying attention, but I know that he's very engaged in legislative activity. So we're thinking about one forum. Does that resonate with you and the work you do? Okay. Okay. I'm assuming that Kate from Jefferson County is also very active in legislative action. And does that format resonate with you also?
Yeah, it's, I think the House and the Senate are still pretty far apart on this. In some ways, it might be worthwhile to have two separate conversations, but it would be interesting to hear them have to, try to kind of reconcile that in real time with us also. I could see there being advantages either way. I think this is going to, this is probably a good time to be having these conversations to kind of I would doubt there's going to be this special budget or special session for transportation that they've talked about. Could happen, but I'm hearing that's unlikely. And then being a non-budget year, there's just so much uncertainty, but I think it's always worthwhile to get our opinions and positions known, and just fingers crossed that they're actually going to make some progress. And maybe the federal infrastructure package will help spur them on to finalize a new transportation budget. But so many unknowns.
Okay. Is there anyone representing, well, Ed is a city. So I guess we're going to move forward trying to schedule and putting together one forum, unless we hear, I'm not hearing anything negative about that today. Okay. So we'll move forward with one forum and try to get a convenient date. I'm also assuming that will probably be online, a virtual meeting, just because of the uncertainty right now. Then I think the other real important thing we need to talk about today is the cover letter. And do we have the right items on the front, and are the messages what we want? We can wordsmith it, but we want to make sure that we have the right bullet points and that we're capturing the message correctly. The thought originally was kind of, what can we work with them to accomplish or give our support to? And then on the second page, we put more of the things we were tracking and were interested in.
And Beck, if I could just add a couple of points to clarify, just to make this super sharp for folks. One of those, so I think, the support for a fair and balanced transportation revenue package sounds familiar. That's one that was on last year's. The next two might be unusual for, I just want to make sure you're tracking with them. One is advocate for more WSDOT funding authority. One of the things that came out of the investment strategy work group, one of the takeaways, is that when legislative funding packages are put together, the Secretary of Transportation is not at the table. And so WSDOT doesn't have any say in what's being selected in the funding package. And this region and others across the state, for us, the highway system, the state highway system, is the backbone of our transportation system. And to not have WSDOT at the table when major funding decisions are being made about that seems a little like we might get more value out of the funding packages if WSDOT could actually be a part of that conversation instead of being given the budget that they're given then to go do something with. So that's what that one's about. And the third bullet on there, this harness the opportunity by the federal infrastructure packages. We're going to talk shortly about the big infrastructure package that got passed by the Senate and the context of all of that. But that package will send a lot more formula funding to Washington State than has been sent in the past, and for brand new programs. And so what this is sort of saying is to the legislators, hey, we would like to work with you in thinking about what to do with that. WSDOT doesn't have they have not reached out to regions yet. They're sort of taking a wait and see approach. but it seems appropriate at this point, knowing that a lot more money is going to be coming to the state, whatever the final package looks like, to let our legislators know that if you need input as to where regional priorities are, our organization would like to work with you on that. So that's what those 2 bullets are about. And I wanted to make sure that was really clear to people, that those are brand new and they're very specific to things that are underway right now. And obviously the 4th bullet, I think you recognize as well from last year, about looking to defederalize small projects, small local projects. It's just not an efficient use of existing resources when you can do the project cheaper and faster with different color money.
Kate?
Yeah, I appreciate the cover letter here. The only thing I see missing is just being such a ferry dependent region. I'd really love to see more about the kind of structural funding issue around, really around vessel replacement and, that, and I don't know if Dennis is still with us, he might have opinions on this too, but just that we're going to continue to be in this situation where unless we get some more vessels built, we're going to continue to have a shortage of boats and runs disrupted, and the ensuing chaos that we have probably all seen in our communities in different ways. So, I don't know if we could add a bullet point somewhere, but I think that is really key. We are not going to get a second boat service back in Port Townsend because our second boat is now the only backup boat for the entire system. And it's just a major structural flaw that there is not dedicated funding for capital replacement of those that's sufficient to keep up with a old fleet.
So Thera, we can decide if that's a front page or a second page item, but we can definitely, when we have the forum, that can be part of our presentation.
Mm-hmm.
We can highlight that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll address that in both places, Kate. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, I would ask, as you guys know I will call on people. Randy, are you around? Are you dancing with your little girl there?
Yes, I'm around.
Okay,
Sorry.
is there anything that, do you have any comments on this? I know that I showed it to you a while back.
Not really. No.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time here on my speakers and stuff.
Yeah, I know. The other person I'm going to call on, who I've never called on before, and it's going to be, oh, she called on me, and that's Gary Anderson, because I know Gary does a lot of work with various organizations and with the legislature. So is this something that you can support through the Port of Bremerton?
As I review it, it does look like something I can support. I'd like to study it a little bit more, and I appreciate Kate's comments about providing funding for vessels in areas like Port Townsend that's kind of an essential element for their community. So I guess what I'm saying is a brief overview suggests that I could support it, but I'd like to study it a little bit more.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Annette, have we, and I don't know whether you're there, have we addressed, are there tribal issues that we need to bring up?
Hi, Beck, thank you. I think there probably will be at least a project that we might consider putting on the list at some point in the future, but we'll have to kind of think that through and maybe reach out to the other tribes that aren't on the meeting today to see if they have any particular projects that they would like to highlight.
Okay, thank you. And does one of our transit agencies want to weigh in? Is there something we're missing for the transit group? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So what we will do is probably convene our committee again and do some wordsmithing on this and make sure we have it right and work on getting a date for a meeting.
And look for an email from me. I will send it out to executive board and TAC members so that we don't have competition between policymakers and staff as far as project, to identify project to include on the list. So, and again, these are not prioritized by PRTPO. They represent priority projects that our members put forward. So, you know, just to be really clear on that, if, you know, and if you look at the past years, you'll see they range from small projects to large. So please look for that email from me in the next, before Labor Day.
Okay, is there any
This is
other
Randy.
Go ahead, Randy.
Just because the comments, everybody else, I think we're all in the same position where we don't have anything bad to say about it at all. We're going to support what's put forward. We see it that way. I guess it's up to us. Just now that we've looked at it, it's our responsibility that if we don't have something to put on there, then we'll support everybody that does. If you have something to put on, get it out, get it in there, and then we can all support it. But you got a great job.
Okay.
Up back.
David?
One thing on the project list we may want to consider is there's a lot of projects here that are already fully funded, whether they should still be on the list, because this is a needs list. And you may want to look at your Sedgwick, because it says you don't need any money for that Port Orchard. I think it's just, you actually need all 6 million. So we may want to proof this a bit for those two aspects.
Right. No, I would anticipate that the whole project list will be new.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be a whole new list.
Okay, I was under the impression that we were just editing out the cover letter, but okay.
Well, okay, Sarah, we are editing.
We just hadn't gotten to that yet, David. So the cover letter came first, and then I'm going to send out before Labor Day, I'm going to send out an email to everybody asking for projects to include on the project list, and we'll use the same format as last year. And if you want to leave your same project on, you can. And if you want to put a new one on, you can. And we have in the past. It's up to you all if you want to put a fully funded project on the list. I agree with you. I think it makes a lot of sense to put an unfunded project on. But in the past, members have wanted to highlight the kinds of projects that they work on. So it's really up to each organization. But I agree with you that identifying need is useful in this vein.
That's appreciated. Thank you.
The reason for putting finance projects on the list is to make sure they actually get built. There's a lot of times where money's there today and gone tomorrow.
Yes. Because although something has funding, let's just use Connecting Washington as an example, they can delay that significantly before funds are released, if ever. So I think that's why something that already has secured funding may be in question. So, okay, so Sarah is going to send out an email. We're going to wordsmith this a bit. We will get our group back together, and we will, anyone that wants to join that group is more than welcome to. It's not private by any means. It's just who has the time. That's what we find a lot these days, that everyone is very, very busy. And then if you have any direct comments, please get them to Sarah or myself, and we will bring them forward. We'll make sure that they're addressed. We will pay attention to your input. So thank you. Going on down, we're a little ahead of schedule, which is great. Sarah, you've done a little bit of research on that federal infrastructure package. Do you want to speak to that for us?
Sure. Hopefully before you all meet again, a new federal funding package will be passed. There is a lot of stuff going on at the federal level about competing. You know, there's new $3.5 trillion package and all that. I'm not going to speak to any of that. There's every evidence to, all indicators point to passage of what the Senate passed. There will be some standoffs, some, seeing who blinks first, I think, but from my resources at the national level, there's sort of a sense that it's unlikely that the Democrats in the House will torpedo a strongly bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed by the Senate. What I wanted to do this morning was to give you just a really brief overview of it, and look for aspects in that overview that you probably, hopefully, haven't just read already in the newspaper headlines. It's certainly gotten a lot of coverage, but given what you all do as a regional organization and the different hats that you wear as members at the local and tribal and transit and state levels, I was looking for aspects of this bill that would be most relevant to you. And I will tell you that I have some things. I don't have a lot of stuff, but I did, like Beck said, I did spend a little bit of time looking through that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do a screen share here and get this pulled up. And I'm going to try to keep this. It gets complicated really fast, but what you see up here, hopefully, let's see how we can pop it into presentation mode. It's the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, is just shy of $1 trillion for the fiscal years 2022 through 2026. I'm going to talk about this in a couple of different ways, and this first screen is really about the baseline investments, or the investments above the baseline budget. We're going to talk about that baseline budget in a second, just because the way this is structured. But this is catching a lot of attention right here, this aspect of it. And we're going to talk about transportation separately. So I'm not really going to go into that $284 billion. I'm not going to talk much about the water and $55 billion. That's a tremendous investment for clean water. Broadband, though, given that this region is frankly one of the only in Washington state to make broadband a regional transportation priority, I wanted to highlight broadband a little bit for you here. This $65 billion in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is on top of the tens of billions that came out of the American Rescue Plan. And there were sort of several components of this that I think I just wanted to highlight for you. First of all, it's the funding. 42.5 billion of that is going to go to states on a sort of a formula program to fund broadband network deployments. And that's on top of the 10 billion already from the American Rescue Plan. The other thing it's sort of significant in that is that it includes a subsidy, that subsidy for low-income Americans that was put into place just recently. This actually takes 14.25 billion out of that 65 and funds a $30 per month subsidy for the next 5 years. So it's not just a one-shot deal, but Congress realizes that at the end of that 5-year period, there's still an issue. And so another aspect of this bill is that it ordered the FCC to come up with a plan to reform universal service, and so that it can become more affordable and not, where the cost of it doesn't become a barrier. And they required the FCC to report back in 9 months. So by this time next year, they should have that report ready of how they intend to go about doing that to achieve the affordability goals of this universal access objective. And then the fourth component, the fourth big component of the broadband package was what they described, what Brookings Institute described as a surge of funding to address digital training and literacy. It includes $2.75 billion to assure universal digital literacy for an economy and society that increasingly operates online. So training programs to help people learn how to use high-speed internet. Apparently there's a large number of people who have access to it but don't use it because they simply don't know how to do that. So I wanted to highlight that part of the broadband package for you because of your interest in broadband. In terms of energy and power, that's a...
Can I interrupt there?
Oh, please.
Just to supplement your remarks, I really appreciate you breaking that out. We've had discussion here before, but those of us involved over the last 20 years always maintained that broadband was a transportation issue above all others. That's the bucket it belonged in. So I appreciate that. The state legislature on their side of it indicated in the last session that equity is a major determinant in this grant funding in the state of Washington, meaning not only access, but affordability, as you properly pointed out. The three big funding agencies in the state of Washington and the pass-through on the federal will be number one, the State Broadband Office, headed up by Russ Elliott, the Public Works Board, of which I am a part, and finally the Community Economic and Revitalization Board. The tribes are active in all of this, and with House Bill 1336, the public utility districts and the ports were granted greater authority, including to apply directly for federal funds the way PSRC gets a set aside on transportation dollars as a metropolitan planning organization, and to liken it to that. So it's a huge influx of money. There's also some discussion about how we can make this sustainable after 2024, some kind of utility excise tax. It looks like it's going to take a federal action like the universal access fee that's tacked on to telecoms, but that has to be worked on. But in the meantime, between now and 2024, yes, a huge amount of money coming into the state of Washington. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Well, and that's just on broadband. Under energy, I mean, all of these are big programs. I will point out that under both energy and power, that's $73 billion in the infrastructure package, and also resiliency, that $46 billion. Big chunks of that are what we would think of as transportation. But I just, it's why it gets so hard when you try to, mix and match these numbers or make everything line up. Focusing on transportation specifically, one of the things I'll just say it really wasn't even super clear to me until really thinking about this, is that the transportation funding, the baseline is actually the reauthorization of the Surface Transportation Act. So the Surface FAST Act expired in September of 2020, and we've been on continuing resolutions ever since. When this is finally approved, it will include the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act of 2021, which is the next 5-year Federal Transportation Act. And it includes money on top of that. That's where that $284 billion extra comes in on top of the baseline. The baseline, though, even the baseline is a significant increase over the FAST Act. So it's about a 34% in terms of appropriations. And we're not going to get into contract authority versus appropriations, just take it at the high level number. Appropriations at this point is looking to be about a 34% increase over FAST Act appropriations for all. And some of that is to existing programs, and some of it is attributable to new programs. So in terms of, and so what you see, and these charts are from the National Association of Counties. I'm grateful for somebody to have taken a crack at putting this together. You can sort of see how that's all distributed out, that $284 billion on top of the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act. And we'll come back and talk about that in a second. But in terms, there's two important new bridge programs. The Bridge Investment Program, $12.5 billion. What they're doing in these, they're defining large bridge projects as anything larger than $50 million. And then all other bridge projects eligible for this funding program must be a minimum of 2.5 million. And the legislation requires that every state every year will get either one large bridge project or two other bridge projects. So that's out of that bridge investment program. And then the 27.5 billion is a new bridge formula program that's formula driven to the states and to tribes, and 15% of the monies that the state receives are eligible for off-system bridges. So one thing I should point out too about whenever I talk about formula, if we're talking federal highway funding formula programs, so, and that's mostly what I'm talking about this morning, sorry, transit, those formulas are not changed as a result of the census. So we're still using 2000 census population distributions by state to distribute federal highway funds. Public transportation funds, their formulas will be modified by the census and by the new definition that the census is coming up with of urbanized areas, and we're not quite sure how that's going to play out. But so when I talk about, especially for any of these federal highway programs, formula programs, the formulas are the same as they've been, and about 94% of the highway trust fund revenues that go into this package will be sent to the states in terms of formula funding. They're also within this new climate action programs. 6.4, actually, I do have some information from the White House. In terms of the bridge programs, based on formula alone, it looks like Washington would expect to receive 4.7 billion for federal aid apportion programs. So out of that, that can't be right. There's no way that can be right. Oh, I'm sorry, 605, my millions and my billions. Washington should expect to receive about 605 million for bridge replacement and repairs over the next 5 years. And then total should expect to receive, about 4.7 billion, but a big chunk of money coming in for bridges. And you'll see that emphasis a lot in this funding package, that there's a lot of emphasis on taking care of the existing system, preservation, retrofit, restoration kind of stuff. There's still an emphasis on building bigger things, but there's a lot of emphasis on taking care of what we already have. The climate action programs, oops, I'm sorry. Shaky hands, too much coffee. Climate action programs. These are new programs that are coming out, the reducing carbon emissions from transportation, the EV charging, and protect and reduction in truck emissions at ports. These show up in different program categories, but these are all new programs that are coming forward. A lot of them are coming forward in formula based. So out of the EV charging, 5 billion of the 7.5 billion is going to states through formula funding. And for us in Washington, they think Washington should expect to receive about 71 million over 5 years to support expansion of EV charging. And then Washington communities will also have an opportunity to apply for that other 2.5 billion. Protect is about resilience. It sounds really amazing. There's a lot I don't know about it, but it is again part of this new emphasis on starting to harden our infrastructure, elevate our infrastructure, reconstruct and prepare for wildfires, rising sea levels, other factors that are going to jeopardize our infrastructure going forward. And then this truck emissions, reducing idling at ports there's a lot of funding for that. So a couple of other highlights in here, there's a strong emphasis on rural and tribal programs. So there's a $3 billion increase in tribal transportation projects. And there's a new competitive rural surface transportation grant program. I'm going to talk about some more tribal stuff later. Airports, 20 billion for airside improvements and terminals. Airside are like runways and taxiways, things like that. And then $5 billion for air traffic control infrastructure, ports and waterways, $2.25 billion in there for DOT port infrastructure development, and just shy of $1 billion for ferry boat and terminal construction. That shows up under the ports and waterways budgets. What I found interesting was to really dive into very specifically the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act, because that's very similar to what we worked with under the FAST Act and Safety Lou and MAP 21 and everything before it. And so what we see when we compare that and is looking at, for Washington State, about a 30% increase from what we used to receive, what we received annually under the FAST Act. And you can see here in this table broken out by program areas, a lot of increases, especially in things like the National Highway Performance Program, STBG, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and then you see the new programs forget that last 100% in that table. I did this morning quickly. We've got a couple of new programs that are showing up in there. The TAP funding, which is the only revenue that PRTPO has any authority over, any say as to what gets funded, because of how the language redefined the set aside within the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program for TAP, we expect to see a pretty significant increase in TAP funding, but I've seen numbers ranging up to 60 or 63% increase in set asides for TAP, but I just don't have anything more solid to say other than I've seen that. I pulled down the details for the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act. And so there are a couple of things to highlight in there that I think you'll find interesting. One of them is that for that Surface Transportation Block Group Program, this is what our rural counties, so for our KITSAP members, the Puget Sound Regional Council handles this for them and has their own process and all. But for our rural counties, WashDOT gives that responsibility of administering STBG funds to the rural counties. So we expect those funds to go up, but there's a new little twist in here too, in that a new population group has been identified, a new population bracket. Before it was for regions like over 50,000 and metropolitan areas over 50 and rural places under 50. And now there's a new designation. So the state will have to make sure that they get STBG funds of a certain amount in areas that have a population between 50,000 and 200,000. I don't know if that's going to mean anything for KITSAP yet, or how that might affect the PSRC process, but it's sort of acknowledging that these smaller urban places sometimes get lost, I think, in the metro mobility funding questions. Other highlights that jumped out at me was my favorite was that the 10-year limit. If you use federal funds to do the PE phase for a project, you have 10 years to move to right-of-way or construction, or else that you have to pay back those funds. That has been eliminated in this program. So that will go away. There will no longer be a 10-year limit on moving to construction or right-of-way if you do your PE phase with federal funding. So I thought that was kind of significant for you all. For freight corridors, there's something called a high priority freight corridors. The mileage that Washington State is authorized to designate of high priority freight corridors, and this is a really important designation for funding for certain types of projects, is going to double. So it'll double from 150 miles to 300 miles for critical rural freight corridors, and it's doubling from 75 miles to 150 miles for critical urban freight corridors. And so that it sort of relates to something in the coordinator's report, and I think is perhaps significant for some of your projects. I wanted to highlight a couple of things on the tribal side. So the nationally significant federal lands and tribal projects program will now start allowing smaller projects to qualify for funding. It also increases to 100% the federal share for tribal projects. And it will, the other thing that's interesting in this is that it requires that on national parks lands, at least one project every year gets funded in national parks that have 3 million or more visitors, and that does, our Olympic National Park falls into that category. So that's kind of significant. It also sets aside $30 million every year for high priority tribal transportation projects. So I hopefully, and I don't have a lot of familiarity with what the funding limits were before, but hopefully, Annette, these are revenues that will make a difference, revenue increases that'll make a difference for tribes. For those who work in public works, this new legislation will require the MUTCD to be updated every 3 years. There will be a new rural surface transportation program grant that's going to be competitive at the national level. As we hear more about it, we'll let you know, but it's really focused on increasing economic opportunity in rural places. And so you'll want to look at that. I'm cognizant of the time. I've gone way longer, but if anybody's interested, I do have a very handy summary from AASHTO, a section by section basis of the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Act that you might find helpful just to anticipate what's coming down. And again, the way the legislation is currently written, they cannot make any changes to this. So I think we can look at the STRA and the overall investment package as being pretty close to what's going to pass, if not identical to what's going to pass, and start thinking strategically in your own communities about how you might want to start maybe pre-positioning for some opportunities. And I think I'll just stop with that, Beck. Thanks.
I'd be interested in that, Thera.
Okay.
I was muted. Casey, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Thera. That was an amazing breakdown of this bill, and probably far more comprehensive than I could have even provided myself. For those of you who I may not have had the opportunity to introduce myself to before, I am Senator Cantwell's South Sound and Olympic Peninsula Outreach Director. And I just wanted to hop in here and say that if you all have any questions or technical questions about this bill or anything in it, I'm happy to make those connections with our policy team, who will have all of the answers for these things. So I'm also going to throw our press release on this bill in there. It has some of the highlights that Senator Cantwell fought really hard for. We're really excited about culvert replacement. There's $1 billion in there, and that's something that I know we talked about in the last section as well. We think that's really great. And then a lot of the things that Thera talked about as well. So I'll throw that in there along with my email. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. If we can do anything, answer any questions, or as some of this starts rolling out and you guys are looking to apply for grant funding, please let me know about letters of support as well, because we're definitely here to assist with all those things. Thanks, everyone. Won't take up too much time.
Appreciate that. Thera, do you want to remove your screen share?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Again, I appreciate that the information that Thera provided. This is all new to us, and it's going to be significant for all of our jurisdictions. Moving down our agenda, we will talk just a little bit about a meeting schedule that we've been looking at post-COVID and the optimism there as that we get to post-COVID. Okay. But in brief, what we were looking at is having a couple of in-person meetings a year for both the executive board and the TAC and the other 4 meetings a year still do virtually. Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
No,
It's pretty self-explanatory, and right now we're kind of in a hold pattern until we can get a better control on the COVID situation locally as well as nationally. So if anyone has any comments on that, please let Sarah or I know, and we can make adjustments. I think the letter in the summary in our packet was pretty self-explanatory of what we were wanting to do. We, going on down our agenda, do you want to do a coordinator's report, Sarah?
Sure, I will just hit on a couple of things in that coordinator's report. And again, just reminding everybody that's sort of an overview of some other things that are going on. Feel free to either contact me or send this to staff and have them contact me if there's something on here super relevant. I want to report out, because of the emphasis, because we did that little consultant contract on electric vehicle infrastructure, we had a work session in late June regarding an upcoming grant program. It was extremely well attended, and even last night I heard from somebody at Olympic National Park who wants to be kept in the loop going forward for the zero emissions vehicle infrastructure program and other possible electric vehicle funding opportunities going forward. So we have online, there's a link there, we have online the information portal that we built with the support from DKS. And I think you'll be hearing more and more what our role in all of this is, just to help disseminate information and help connect people with each other in that process. There's a project that you may be hearing about soon, and as I was looking at the infrastructure package, I could see funding in there that's like, oh, that's the kind of a program that's meant for that kind of a project. We did submit a letter of support to a fish and wildlife project that was submitted for a big national competitive infrastructure grant. It's the Duckabush Estuary Restoration US 101 Elevation Project. It's an unusual type of a project. They contacted us to make sure that they were consistent with, our regional transportation plan, didn't know even what it was. And so that led to this conversation. It's a really interesting project. And if we can make the time next month, we'd like to invite them to give you a briefing on it. It's an Army Corps of Engineer Fish and Wildlife project where DOT is almost a contractor to deal with elevation of US 101 through a significant area south of Brennan in Jefferson County, that on Hood Canal, that I think you would find really interesting. There is a critical urban and rural freight corridor update underway. This builds on the work that we talked about a couple of months ago about updating the freight and goods transportation system. Mileage got doubled and is being doubled in this new Transportation Act. One of the things I wanted to point out for our Kitsap County members is that there's PSRC may be doing all of Kitsap County, or maybe they just do the metropolitan part of Kitsap County to do that freight corridor designation. So I'm not sure quite how to, what to tell you, except that Jennifer Barnes from PSRC will be on this committee, this statewide committee that's looking at designating these new routes, and especially for the Gorst project. These big mega projects, if they're not located on one of these critical urban and rural freight corridors, they are probably not going to compete well. So, so definitely keep an eye on that designation update process and make sure that routes that are important to you for freight show up on that. And I think that's all I would say specifically off of this. Back, if anybody has anything that jumped out at them, if they looked at it, or give me a shout or get in touch with me later.
If there, this is David. Gorst is already a critical urban freight route.
Yeah, they're just so you know, they're going to undesignate some and redesignate others. So just make sure it doesn't get undesignated. That's it for me.
Okay, are there any questions or comments regarding the ancillary work that Sarah keeps us surprised of in her coordinator's report? Okay, seeing none, we will go down to our public comment because this is a public meeting. If there's anyone in the public that wishes to give testimony, we would be glad to hear it at this point. If you would, just please raise your hand. Okay, I am seeing no one raising their hand to give public comment. So we will go down to our new section, which is if we have any members that want to provide any information sharing that you have of projects you're doing that would be a general interest to the region. Is anyone doing anything you want to talk about or let us know about? Or are there any issues that you may need some assistance with? David?
Yeah, just a notice that the Gorse Coalition held their kind of announcements group meeting last week for the first time in Gorse. So they held it on a very hot day and had a lot of member organizations and individuals there to discuss, and a lot of elected representatives and were there. It was just kind of their kickoff meeting.
I'm going to add to that because I had a conflict and was not able to attend. But they held this kickoff meeting. I don't know how many of you have driven through Gorst, but they held a kickoff meeting at 4 o'clock at Peninsula Subaru in Gorst. And it was one of those 90-degree days or more. And they had it all set up outside in the Subaru parking lot. And if any of you have traveled through Gorst at 4 o'clock, you know the challenges of that. So they started their presentation at 4, and I'm not sure when it ended, but I know all the attendees had to deal with the traffic. And I thought that was probably very intentional for the electeds around the region to see what Gorst is really all about. So is there anything else, anyone? Gary, please.
I did attend that meeting, and you're right, it was a hot day, but it was well attended. And I think everybody felt that was the appropriate venue for it because of the traffic going by, particularly John Clausen, because when he was giving his speech, at least 3 Kitsap Transit buses rolled by in the background and right behind him. So it made his point pretty clear.
Is there anything else? Oh, please, Wendy.
I do. Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you saw me. I wanted to share some good news from Jefferson County Public Works that we applied for a bridge rehabilitation program. It's lovingly called BRAC. And we thought that the outcome of that competition for competitive funds, federal funds, that we applied for in February wouldn't occur until October. But we did hear recently that our Little Quilcene River Bridge rehab project, reconstruction project, was highly ranked and therefore will be fully funded for design and construction. And what is incredible about this is that it's a regional route that will be utilized by, which currently is, let me back up and say that it's weight restricted because it so badly needs to be replaced, over a salmon-bearing stream that leads to our community called Quilcene, but it's totally necessary for this route to be fortified in time for the Highway 101 project. So hand in hand, we've got a regional network figured out of how to make sure that traffic gets into the Hood Canal area.
Perfect, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to share? Kate, please.
Yeah, and I'm wearing my Chair of Jefferson Transit hat here, which Sarah and Tammy could fill in any details that I don't have, but very excited to announce that we are starting a new service, transit service running from Port Townsend to the Kingston Ferry Terminal. And it's a very few stops, so fairly express, direct route, which I think is really going to add to our ability to do more regional connections. So something that we've been working on for a long time. And as I'm in a household that has commuters to the other side of the water, I'm really excited that that service is going to be starting up in October. Anything I left out, Sarah?
No, you hit all the highlights. We're really excited to get this route started. We're seeing a stabilization in our employment, which is where we were. We were trying to find drivers. So it's beginning to look a lot better for us.
Is there anything else anyone would like to share? Okay, thank you. With that, our agenda is complete. And if there's nothing else anyone wishes to discuss, we can adjourn the meeting and we will see everyone in October.